Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world. Welcome to another High Vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro. And this week, I'm excited to dive in with these wonderful ladies and guest, Dr. Bindu Babu. And we're here to talk about narcissistic abuse. Now, this is a topic that I have so many emotions about, as I think many of us do. And just leading up to this conversation today, I was thinking about all the ways that I've navigated this in my life, from a personal and professional standpoint, and the way that I've gotten out of these situations as well to try to improve myself and continue on my transformation journey. So it just brings back a lot of the emotion, the anxiety that I have felt in my life, and still navigate, and the way that I interact with people. So I don't want to make this all about me, though, because we do have Dr. Bindu with us today. So I'm excited to really start this conversation. And first off, Dr. Bindu, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do so that people can get familiar with you?
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with amongst all of us powerful super women. It's always great to powwow together and bring like-mindedness and to really talk about this topic that's very precious to me, where I devoted my entire career into. And that's narcissistic toxic relationships, narcissistic toxic abuse. I am a medical physician, practitioner, and I did my doctorate in natural medicine. I did my PhD in integrative medicine. I'm a Reiki Master, a Past Life Regression Therapist, author and speaker, author of the book My Soulmate, My Love, My Narcissist. Thanks to Linda, who was super supportive, and Stina, to get that book out, because that was a bringing all my science in there. And Linda's like, no, people are not going to understand what you're talking about. And she was just so instrumental in that book, really to help me and help all others who are in toxic relationships. So and I went through my own personal journey where I was super left-brained and I couldn't understand anything beyond that. And that's why I opened myself up to where I knew I needed healing from my own personal relationships. And that's why I took this journey. And when I was going through it, no one even understood what narcissism is. Now it's become this big brand, where everybody is called a narcissist, which is not true. I see so much hate groups and hurtful groups out there in regarding narcissism, which is just not healing. Social media can do that, but it's really important to steer towards the understanding of narcissism and bringing your own healing with self-care and self-love. So that's what I do now. I coach one-on-one, I speak, I do a lot of health and wellness work. I do a lot of work with New York City. And that's basically about me.
I mean, you do so many amazing things throughout the community, which is not limited to New York City, and educating people and helping them navigate to learn more about what narcissistic abuse really is and how to overcome those things. So I guess it's really important to ask, for anybody who doesn't know or may have misconstrued the idea of narcissism, what exactly is it?
So narcissism is first of all, it's a personality disorder. People have to understand that there's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder and how people consider narcissistic traits in somebody. It's more of a description when you say a person is like a narcissist or a person has this type of trait. There's 100 different collaborative traits in a narcissist, from being egotistical to being hurtful to being a delusion of grandeur. I mean, you name it. So it's really understanding that a narcissist is a person who does have no self-worth, has absolutely no self-love, but lives in a false pretense of confidence that they attain with supply of kind of putting somebody else down. Um, and that's how they feel their self-worth. And they will do anything to prioritize themselves first over anyone. Doesn't matter, family, kids, children, whatever. So you can have a narcissist as a partner. That could be men or women. It can be a boss. It can be a coworker. It can be especially a family member, a mother or father that were brought up in. So it's an awful circumstance. That's what a narcissist is. A deep sense of coping mechanism that they deal with, and to feel their self-worth.
So I guess what I'm wondering, and I know it's often misconstrued and mixed up, is gaslighting often misrepresented as narcissism, or do they kind of go hand in hand?
Gaslighting is an attribute that a person, so it's a different term altogether, right? It means I will confuse you and make you believe in a story that never existed. I will confuse you to make you believe that you're something completely not what you are. And you will start believing in my words and terms that you are actually what I'm saying you are. So that is what gaslighting means. That means that I'm telling you, let's say, Stina, that you are an astronaut because you wear glasses. And I make this elaborate story that you are, where you actually start believing that, oh, maybe she's right. I am wearing glasses. I am wearing this pretty blue shirt. Astronauts do wear that. You know what? I think I am. And after hearing it over and over, you're like, I am an astronaut. So it's really that simple, but very impactful, because now you're talking about people's insecurities, right? You're saying you're not smart enough because you're wearing glasses. And if you have a feeling that you might not be a little smart, you start believing in that. And these people will elaborately make the story up. So anyone can gaslight you, but a narcissist definitely gaslights you to believe in what you are, a lesser being than who you are, to make themselves feel better about themselves.
I think that's a really important distinction too, that like not all people who gaslight are narcissists. And that is a trait of narcissism, but the reverse isn't true. Like narcissism isn't a trait of gaslighting. So I love that you've differentiated the two, because I think people often use them synonymously. And especially in some of the conversations that I've been having with people lately, not about myself, but about the other people that I've been having these conversations with, it's almost like people use them interchangeably to try and like define their abuser. But they're totally not the same thing.
Absolutely, because emotional abuse can come from anybody. It doesn't have to be a narcissist. And people try to label. When you're in pain, you're looking for help. You're looking for reasons why. And now you have a social media and Google that will kind of navigate to your mindset of what you want to believe, to make it feel better for yourself, right? So you kind of sit there and you're like, my partner or my spouse is, doing this, doing that. There must be something more depth. They can't be a bad person. So this is where, because that means you're with a bad person. You have to acknowledge that person is a bad person. So now you look for a label, which is called narcissist, which is out there. But technically, your partner may not be a narcissist. They might just be an awful person. So it's kind of going hand on hand with what's out there and people's desperation for help, right? Everybody's hurting. So it was important to understand that there's a difference between gaslighting and narcissists. I mean, in my book, Linda, you love this. I almost took it out. I named it mind effing. I don't want to say it out loud. We all know what effing is, but it was actually titled, and that is exactly what gaslighting is. It's really messing with your head.
It's so good to have you here, Bindu. So after having gone through years of gaslighting myself, I realized it way past, way after the relationship, because I started hearing that there's a storytelling going on inside my head about who I am and what I'm capable of. And I started to recognize that these aren't my words. And I realized that I had been having my focus so much on his person throughout the relationship, um, in out of fear, like, what's his mood gonna be like? And what can I do to make things right, before he comes home so that he doesn't lash out? And I had been under so much pressure and so much present with him that I didn't know myself anymore. I didn't know my own story. I didn't even know that I had the power to write my own story. So I remember it was such a process for me to come back to myself and who I was, and just becoming aware of where the fence is. Where do I, who am I, and where do I end, and where does this other person and their responsibilities begin? And I'd love to hear some more of your work with clients, and how do we support people to become aware of this journey and just the place that they're in, and what life can really look like, who they can really, who they are.
So, I mean, what you kind of described was walking on eggshells, right? Like you don't know what you do next or what you will do to set that person off against you. And the reason you become to that point of one is, of course, you don't want the abuse, right? You're trying to prevent the abuse. Two, you're trying to most probably keep your family or keep the relationship together. Three, you're hoping that if you do everything right, that you'll get that happiness that you have. So it's more of all of trying, right? All of the above to get happiness. That's really what that all is. Prevention of hurt, prevention of pain, just to be happy and just really kind of have a simple life, right? That's all you want. And what happens here is when you're in a narcissistic relationship, you truly do believe at that point that you are the cause of the problem. So when you feel you are the cause of the problem and somebody's telling you just do, your partner, the narcissist is telling you, well, if you only just held the cup properly, it wouldn't be this bad. Or if you only just made dinner hot, it wouldn't be this bad. Or if you just wore your dress properly, like the way a woman should, it wouldn't be this bad. So now you're convinced that you are doing this bad situation. You're getting the answers of how to correct it. So you're not going to seek for help because you're given the resolution by your partner. You're not understanding that that is not the resolution, that you should wear a longer skirt, or you should have, or you should heat up the dinner better. That's his responsibility or her response. The partner's, go heat it up yourself, right? So it's kind of pulling yourself back of your self-worth, which takes time. The most biggest thing of what you said in awareness is to understand that this story you said right now, my story, or whoever else has been in the story, is the same repetitive story. Just instead of the cup, it might be a piece of paper. Instead of wearing a longer dress, it might have been your hair color. It's the repetitive story of you not doing the right thing to not cause anger or distress in your relationship. And it's the same repetitive story of control, the same repetitive story of losing yourself and leaving yourself of a shell of yourself, the same repetitive story of trying to keep it together for your kids or family if you have a family. So when that stories are out, is when women or men who are in narcissistic relationships realize, wait, this is one too many. I'm not alone. Something is wrong. That's how that awareness comes. People who generally look for narcissism in a online, or it's generally speaking, even people who come to me and say, hey, I want a session with you, I'm with a narcissist. Those women or men are looking for those to understand what narcissism is, to fix them. They want to fix the partner. So let me know what their traits are. What is it? Oh, they have ego. Oh, okay, let me fix them.
Mm.
Oh, do they need more love because they don't love themselves? Let me love them more. Let me make that dinner hotter. Let me make them sure I'm more with you. That's not fixing them. That's enabling. So it's tough when you say about awareness. Awareness really comes when you hear Mary from some other country, or Mary who lives next door has the same story as me, and she's not happy either, and that means there's something wrong, and I need to pull myself
Hmm.
where I need my happiness and self-worth, self-love, and self-care. So honestly, it's not about awareness of who a narcissist is, because people don't want to believe they're a narcissist. It's understanding that you are worth more than that, and removing limiting beliefs that I must stay for my kids, I must stay for society, I must stay for what, I don't know, the Joneses says next door, or what my parents might say, or be repulsed by the word divorce. It's not okay. That's what society says. It's not okay. Things like that needs to change. So
Mm.
what does that mean? That's the awareness. Your limiting beliefs.
Yeah. I became aware that I had choice because I had been so present in his sphere where I had no power. I was constantly feeling powerless. I could not control the future. I had regrets about the past. And when I started being present with the fact that I was actually making decisions every day, I was making decisions to stay or to try to fix things, fix him, keep up facades. And I was also able to forgive myself for what I had allowed. And that does not take away any of his responsibility. It only adds to my self-awareness and my compassion towards myself. That because I am now recognizing that I had choice then, I'm able to step into the choices that I had today. And every day I can make a new decision that serves me and my kids.
Absolutely. It's a healing journey, right? It's recognizing you have choice.
Yes.
That's when that opens up.
Hmm.
Bindu, I absolutely love your description in your book about the empath and the narcissist and that whole dance, and how like the empath was, I'll just love you more, and the narcissist is like, like love, like that's danger, Will Robinson. Can you speak to that a little bit? I just love that part.
So generally speaking, in a relationship with narcissism, the statistics are that the other partner is an empath, or empath and a codependent. So empaths mean a person who can feel your pain or can feel the other person's like their own. They can actually feel you, feel around you, your surroundings, and can relate to it like it's their own. A codependent is a person who feels they can only be loved when they do something good for the other person. Like, I'm good to you. I made you, I don't know, a nice dinner. So when the person says, oh, what a nice, you're so great, that's when you feel like, see, I did something good. I served you. And that's the reason why I can be loved. That's the only way I can be loved. If I do something bad, that means that I deserve not to be loved. There's no unconditional love understanding here. So when you have a narcissist who is in pain, obviously they're in pain. They don't look like they're in pain, but they're in depth of pain. And you have a narcissist who loves to be served and gives you rewards for it. That's a codependent's dream. And a narcissist's dream to be served. So it becomes a dance. A codependent keeps going and doing everything they can to make a narcissist happy. And the narcissist rewards them with love by saying, you're so amazing. Thank you for, I don't know, quitting your job and giving up everything for me and our family, because that shows that you love me. And then the codependent feels happy that they made that decision, because now, look, I'm such a good person and the narcissist loves me. So it keeps continuing where you keep losing, the codependent keeps losing themselves and sacrificing what they love to give the narcissist. Now, what happens is narcissist eventually gets bored because you're so giving. They need more drama. So they pull back, and nothing you do is good enough. So example would be if you're making dinner and you made the the narcissist's favorite dinner, and all of a sudden it's not warm enough, they criticize you. Then you feel like you're not good enough, you're not worthy. Then you try harder and harder. So it becomes a back and forth dance, and you get stuck in it.
What's an example of this? Like, how does it show up in the workplace?
In a workplace, so if your boss, let's say, is a narcissist, right? They try to micromanage you to a point where no matter what you do, it's not good enough, and you're not a good employee, and you don't give enough to your job. So let's say you had a assignment to do that had to be filled in, and you thought it was perfect. The boss would look at it and undermine it all the time and say, no, this is not good enough. You need to do this. You need to do that. You're not, always constantly stepping on you and controlling you and making you feel awful for the work you are. So it's pretty much, you can never come up to their place because you are a threat. So they'll always pull you down.
I relate to that on so many levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where Jenny's awareness came when she realized she had a choice, my awareness came when I realized that I could decide for myself, that the choice, it wasn't just about the choice. It was about deciding to do things my way and for me.
Right.
And that's the autonomy that I talk so much about, is like deciding my way of things and finding that freedom. And I was in it for so long that I really lost myself. I lived to work and serve my boss and the company and the clients and my coworkers, and give every little bit that I had of myself, that I wasn't even a person anymore. Like, I was just this person, this vessel that could like serve others, and there was nothing in it for me, and it was just so draining. So when I had this awakening moment that I like to refer to as Operation Separation, it really allowed me to focus on, how do I get back to myself in a healthy way. And so, yeah. So I thank you for sharing that example of how it shows up in the workplace, because many people may have only experienced it on a personal level and don't understand how it can show up somewhere else.
Oh no, boss narcissism in workplace is very common. Very common, very common. You have to be like, a lot of narcissists, you generally are very successful people too, because of their attitude. So it's very common that you're, a narcissist or a boss, because they have no empathy. There's no empathy. There's no emotion involved in their decisions. It's very cutthroat, because they'll always think what benefits them. So it doesn't matter what happens to you. It's justified in their head. So if you're a threat to them, they're going to pull you down at work. He's going, or she, sorry, could do anything to you.
Yeah. Clients who share about being in these types of relationships, private or also in business, it seems that those people coming into their lives at first will give plenty of praise and make them the center, will approach them in a way that they actually do feel what they later understand to be a false sense of confirmation or value. And what I found myself and what I see in them is that this does something to you. And it also does something with who you go to look for that confirmation. This person becomes your go-to when you want that sense of, it is enough, isn't it? Like, that's what I'm used to receiving from you. And then all of a sudden, one day, it just changes. And I mean, that's a specific stage. I'd love to hear more from you about that.
So if you're talking about the entire narcissistic cycle, I mean, you started talking about the love bombing, right? So that's when you start. So you said something that was profound. You said that it was you said false confirmation. Did you say that?
Yeah.
False confirmation. So that's powerful
Yes.
because it's not. The narcissists do everything truly. So whatever love they're showing is true. Whatever positive words
Mm.
come out of their mouth is true. But they're so limited to think beyond
Mm.
that. And they can't give because they're half empty. They don't love themselves. So they will love you in the maximum capacity. All that passion is the amount they can give, but is limited because that's as much as they can give because they will always put themselves first. So anytime, like normal people, if you're threatened by something, you work it out. But here you're talking about people who will cut you off without thinking twice because you've become a threat to their supply or to their feelings or to anything that makes them feel insecure or a possibility of being hurt. They will attack you. So
Mm.
the love bombing is very real. Like they do admire you. They always pick, first of all, narcissists always picks people that are way better than them, right? They have to admire you because it feels good when they admire you that they can step on you and put you under your foot. So they have to have somebody that's way, way above. It's just unfortunately, we all carry baggage that we don't see that in ourselves. So we allow it. So when they're bombing you and giving you all that appreciation, the love, and so forth, it's real. And then the minute when they're bored and they realize they have you in your hand and they're bored, they want some action going and they want to make sure they have your control is when they test you. And that's when they pull away. And the fact that you're going after them after they pull away shows that they have control. Their worth has been proven. So it's a cycle of worth, really, where when they're giving you the attention. See, one thing you said, like for example, confirmation. We should only confirm ourselves. We should not have confirmation from anyone. We have to love ourselves first. Other people in our lives should be just an accessory. Right? So we should not be seeking anything from anybody else except normal companionship, comfort, and love. And what happens with the cycle, again, is because that term codependency, right? So we sit there and we get this, we're put on this pedestal. Now all of a sudden we feel like we are worth it. And when the person takes you off that pedestal, the narcissist, we can't handle it. So we seek more of that love because we don't love ourselves enough. So it's really two people involved in that toxicity because there's nothing unconditional of wanting someone to continuously give you love. You should love yourself enough that you don't need it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love that question. Yes, it does. And I was thinking about it just the other day, what it is that drives us to seek to be consumed or to consume someone else and to have this, where you lose yourself and in this relationship. It can even be a company, like in the relationship to your company, that you want to be so in awe of this context. And what came to my mind is that there's something, and also when you're looking at destructive cults, there is a sense of freedom in not being responsible for your own choices because you're doing what someone else is telling you to do. And I was just playing around with that a little bit in my mind, that false sense of freedom in giving yourself up in a relationship. What's coming up for you guys as I mentioned that?
I was thinking earlier about cult leaders when Bindu was talking, and I was thinking, yeah, probably just about every cult leader is a narcissist. When you learn about all of the tactics that are used to build a cult, they're very much in line with having the people that follow you lose themselves, give everything to that cult financially, emotionally, at disconnecting them from support outside of the cult, so that escaping it gets harder and harder for them to do. And so, yeah, when you said cults, I was definitely thinking like the narcissistic relationship is their little cult of one, especially there are people that I know who they're the only one that has been the target of that. Everyone else that knows their narcissistic partner thought that they're just this really outgoing, very charismatic person, very easygoing, like happy-go-lucky type person. And she was the only one receiving the other side of that and the narcissistic abuse. And so there's definitely like that cult flavor to it. And I also thought what you said, Bindu, about like the codependency was interesting, and Jenny too, about like choice and codependency. I don't think that it's necessarily a result of narcissistic abuse, but I've seen with caring for my mom, who's gone through quite a lot of health challenges lately, and aging, and she has a hard time taking on her own choice responsibility when there's not like a clear, this is what's right and this is what's wrong, or this is the choice that will be rewarded, or this is what you have to do. And so I can see in myself that trait, having just learned that, watching the way that she's made decisions and the way that I've been taught to do things, and how it's made me more susceptible to, and I don't know that I would even necessarily say narcissistic abuse, but just in those power dynamics where I am the more codependent and the other person is maybe more narcissistic, I will tend to want to please them and do things for that reward or feedback or love. Because if nothing is happening, it's like I assume rejection in the lull or in the silence. A friend of mine just told me the other day there was a name for that. Now it's escaping me. It's something connected to ADHD. It's a rejection, something dysphoria, where like you're just prone to assume that you're being rejected. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think it kind of plays into that codependent thing too, where the narcissist gets bored because they're being served all the time. And the codependent will get bored in a lull of that affirmation and the reward and the, being praised, being loved. Like it's boring when that's not happening. So then you're always trying to create more of it by pleasing more. And then if the narcissist is getting bored and pulling back, like you're just in this like never-ending chase of that person.
Really keeps the cycle going, doesn't it?
How about you, Dorit?
Well, I'm just sitting here, wondering about the childhood of the narcissist, because I always go back and what do we know about how their childhood was? I mean, how does a narcissist get made? And what can people do to perhaps prevent their kid to turn up as a narcissist?
So, and it's a narcissism. It's a coping mechanism, right? It's more of not receiving the love they deserved as a child, 100%. And it's people's parental belief structure that comes in play. So it's not that, your child just becomes a narcissist. You make a narcissist, and people need to own that. It's always sitting there and putting the child down, that they're not good enough constantly. A lot of parents do that and they don't realize it. Sometimes they do it because it's the way they think. Some people think it's a good way to challenge a child to try harder. There's so many different reasons for parents to do this, but it doesn't help, because if you're constantly comparing two kids, siblings, look, your brother is better than you. Look, your brother did this, your brother did that, your brother, whatever it is. I mean, that's one form, right? Where the child is never praised, no matter how hard they try, they're just never good enough. Or anything like you got a 95, well, you didn't get the 100, you're not good enough. Why didn't you do it? And or it's always getting the lesser end of the stick. And so, there's two ways a child will either one, learn a coping mechanism that, they're not worthy. So they will make sure they get you before they get hurt themselves, before someone else says something to them and say they're terrible. So that's why they're, you'll see a narcissist, like what Stina said, is generally speaking, they're very charming, very late. They feel like they have to do this whole false pretense of who they are to be liked or lovable. Otherwise, they're not good enough. So it's lack of love from the parent, or the lack of, or constant comparison and the putting down of the child, never ever giving them the care and love that they need, the nurturing that they need to grow into who they are, and accepting the child for who they are as well.
And Dora, you've spoken to the child who just pretty much rules the roost and can get away with anything. Do you want to speak to that real quick? As far as becoming a narcissist?
Or what's the question for me?
Yeah, Dora. I said Dora, it must not have come through. I said
okay.
your name.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get that. Can you repeat the question, please? Because I thought it was for Dr. Bindu. Yeah.
Well, you have your story, so
yeah.
Yeah. And so children who pretty much rule the roost and get away with anything, super spoiled, and connection to narcissism. You want to explain a little of that and ask that as a question as well?
Yeah, well, my experience with narcissism was my first real relationship when I was 20. I had a son with him. We were together for 3 years, and he was super, super spoiled. Like, there was no parenting whatsoever. His mom had just decided when she was 25 that she wanted a kid. So she just decided to have a random man. There was no father involved. She didn't want one. She was raising this boy alone, he got food and clothes, but otherwise he could do whatever he wanted because he didn't need any boundaries. There was no bedtime. There was no guidance whatsoever. And that turned him into a monster, really. He would throw cups and plates after her. He would, abuse her verbally. He was really, really bad. And, I got a little taste of it too, but I got him back. So, yeah. Is that something too? I mean, can the lack of boundaries, can the lack of parenting altogether? I mean, he was spoiled with all the things and all the freedom that he could have, a beautiful house, and his mother gave him the most expensive things and all of that, but never put down any boundaries, never said no to him in any shape or form. How can that make him a narcissist?
Generally speaking, it's that sounds more like disciplinary and other issues like acting out, looking for attention. I mean, it sounds like throwing the cups and things like that always sounds to me of acting out, needing attention and different other avenues and self-worth. To me, that doesn't sound like the pattern of a narcissist, but I mean, we'd have to talk more offline or have more depth into really analyzing that. But boundaries is not an issue. It's always a lack of love that causes a narcissist to feel they don't love you. They're not worth it. There's no love there. They don't feel they're worthy, and they don't feel that they can be loved. They don't feel like they're worthy of love. They don't feel love, and they don't love themselves. So it's all of that brings this coping mechanism where they have to be this charming, wonderful person. And the reason they constantly step on their partner is to constantly test if that partner will still stay no matter what. And when they do stay, they feel better about themselves. So it's not the action of abuse, or the reason why the abuse gets worse as time goes is because the codependent or the partner keeps wisening up. It doesn't work anymore. So the abuse gets worse and worse and worse as time goes by, because the partner will start questioning. So the narcissist will abuse harder, where if the person still stays there after that one, oh wow, well, I'm worthy. So it's different of a pattern, to be frank.
Yeah, he definitely did that with me, that it got worse and worse, and he was super selfish, did everything he could to kind of keep me down, and I stayed, of course, because, well, we had the kids, so I tried that. I thought that was the right thing to do. Yeah, until I finally came to my senses. So.
And he started out the whole Prince Charming thing with you.
Oh yeah. He just swept me off my feet. I was gone in 60 seconds. That was the best routine I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when kids, when there aren't any boundaries, I don't really believe kids feel loved when they're allowed to get away with anything. I wonder if that would be part of the not feeling loved.
No, I would agree with you on that, Linda. Absolutely. Like I said, it's just so much factors involved with it. Like, for me to sit down, like, it's just not, if you don't put boundaries, children act out too, right? So it's kind of like really kind of understanding more in depth in this conversation, to be like, somewhere along, if he is a full-on, there, you will see that his there must be some sort of lack of love or care. I mean, if obviously if the mother's not in the picture and she's not worthy for her to spend time with him, those things will be in depth where, sure.
I can definitely speak to the acting out part. I have my 3-year-old grandson, and he's been with me like every day almost for a year, and I have him here almost every week. And I had him like on the Saturday. On the Monday, his grandma came for a week. She's visiting from England, and I had him again the day after she left, and she had no boundaries. He was allowed to do anything, and he was completely different just within that week. And I've talked to both his parents, and they were like, yeah, she let them do whatever. She never said no to him. He could scream and run and tear down things, and he'd need to have his food, and that completely switched him. So he was like a little troll when he was with me the next day after. And I was like, where is my sweet little boy? What happened to you in a week? So I got a message yesterday from my son. I had him all day. What day was that? Tuesday. So yesterday, Wednesday, I got a message from my son saying, he a little bit of grandma therapy here did him well. He is back to normal again. So we managed to kind of reset him. But I said, well, you have to tell her that she's not helping. She's not doing him any favors by letting him do that. He gets completely confused when we have boundaries and his parents have boundaries, and she comes and he can do whatever. Isn't that right? Or am I missing something?
No. I was thinking about what you're saying. It's absolutely. I mean, children need discipline. Adults need discipline. We all need discipline. It's structure, right? But she's not going to discipline because she's not going to look like the bad guy. She's going to want to look good, and she's going to. There's definitely, when you say that, there's a lack of love of herself. She doesn't want to discipline because then she's going to look like the bad guy. She's not going to feel loved. So there's definitely a chain of events. She's going to do that. Is he going to become a narcissist from that? No, he's just going to be wild out, and he's not going to understand. He's going to feel like he gets what he wants and all, the normal stuff, Children not having any boundaries or any discipline is another story altogether, right? But in the case of of your ex and his mom, there's a different story, because right now when you said that, it makes more sense of why she didn't put boundaries, because she didn't want to not feel loved. So a lot of depth in there with that whole scenario, but you know.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I want to just remind everybody that this is a safe space to talk about these things. I see that we have somebody who said that they were a survivor and they're in the healing process. For anonymity reasons, I can't see who you are, LinkedIn user, and that's okay. That's your privacy, that's your right. But I do want everybody to know that this is a safe space to share and to be heard and to feel like you're worthy. And so I want to thank you, ladies, for joining today. Dr. Bindu, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and your high vibe energy, because it really comes through the way that you embrace this topic and help people work through it and understand it at any intersection that they're navigating it. So I think this has been a really powerful and important conversation. Is there anything else that people want to share before we say our goodbyes till next week?
Did you have anything else, Tina?
I feel complete with this. Jenny, how about you?
I would like, yes, I just want to ask you, Bindu, to speak to the healing journey, because we are all witness to the fact that there is healing and there's freedom and there's power in all our lives, and there's room to expand and claim the space that was always ours. So if you just want a word of wisdom for people waking up to realize that they're in this kind of a relationship, something moving forward.
Well, I mean, number one is understanding you're not alone. You know, there's so many people out there. I mean, if you see my inbox and my messages and all social media, it's something or the other, or a question, it's awful. And there's a lot of people who are silently watching for help, because, you know, we have our belief structure of what's important. Every one of us have a right for our priorities, whether it's belief structure in marriage, whether it's society, whatever. We all have a right to what we believe in, but sometimes they can be a little limiting, where we lose ourselves. So it's important to understand that, you know, like, for example, you know, I'm divorced. Am I an advocate of divorce? Absolutely not. You should stay in a marriage you made a vow to. Otherwise, don't get married. But if you're in a situation of abuse, toxic abuse, emotional or physical abuse of any sort, don't live like that, because you're losing your life. That's not vows. Vows is protection of each other, not abuse each other. So leave. It's better for your children. I'll leave something very important that was profound, that, you know, I am the chair of Health and Wellness for New York City Speaks, which is a survey that we did for all 5 boroughs of New York City. And one of the questions that I put out was about intimate partner violence and domestic violence. In that, the adults, now the medium range is about 15%. So understand that, right? Everything is 11, 15, 20 max. Maximum with highest for any of those questions of answer was 17%. And that was, what was the priority of services that you would like? The second priority for adults was domestic violence abuse programs and support, right? 11%. This survey was for adults as well as youth. The highest request in that question for children, for youth, was domestic violence support and help. 17% of the city youth requested support for domestic violence, intimate partner violence programs. Youth. Why? Because when the parents are having this issue, it's the youth. But the youth are the ones crying out for help, because the parents are still in their limiting beliefs of staying together for the family, or for the society, for finances, for priorities, all those things in their head. So let's not talk about it. So let's not make DV a important topic. But who spoke about it? It was the youth. The youth is crying out for programs and help over the adults in mental health. That speaks volumes of how culturally subjected we are in the belief structure of staying together for your kids. You're hurting your kids. You know, and don't believe in that. I remember when I was leaving my marriage, my entire family, society, everyone said, your kids are going to become drug dealers if you leave your husband. My kids are in college and they're doing fine. And they're living their lives the best way they can. And whatever I can support them, they're happy and healthy and they're okay. And that's what matters. Our children are going to follow our footsteps, not society. Just like what Sina said, she learned goods and bads from her parents and implemented in her life. So change and break the generational bond that you have and move forward and be the new existence for your kids so that they don't have and repeat the bad patterns that you've done that's negative in their lives. And that's healing. You know, empowering yourself, loving yourself, meditation, that saved my life, being mindful, energy healing, and reprogramming the mindset. I mean, the work I do is neuroplasticity, brain neuroplasticity, reprogramming the neural pathways in your brain to cut those habits. And that's how you heal.
So for anyone looking to learn more about this, how you have a nonprofit and you have an online course to help guide people through this, where can they find those things?
You can definitely find it on my website, www.bindubabu.com. You can Google me. My course is on Thinkific. It's on websites. I have Instagram, Dr. Bindu Babu. I have my Facebook, Dr. Bindu Babu. Just Google and you will find me. And whatever I can do, I will try to help and do.
Well, we love and appreciate your support today. Thank you for joining us for this high vibe conversation. For anybody who's tuning in or watching the replay, feel free to drop your questions and comments. We will respond to them in due time. So thank you for joining. We look forward to another high vibe conversation, same time next week. That's all for now.
Such a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.